is the organization that you're entering now compared to the one when you joined 20 years ago? How different is it? Or is it the same?
Well, it's the same organization. Fiery fans, fiery people that love football here in Detroit. I would say the talent is a lot different. The leadership is a lot different. I'm a little jealous, right? Because just looking at how they finished last year, looking at all the excitement they had on the field, looking at how much fun they was having with Dan and the rest of the coaching staff. They were on Hard Knocks. They was on TV. I mean, it's a lot of excitement, man. When I heard people talk about the Lions here in this community, just all across, football world, there's a lot of excitement, right? And me as a former player, that's something that you could wish to be a part of. And I didn't get a chance to experience some of that as a player. So it's pretty cool to be back on the other side and to see the drive that the guys have, the coaches, the camaraderie that we have up top, the group of men that Dan has been able to put together. It's pretty cool to see.
You've got three new guys, obviously, from the secondary from what they had last year. Just your first impressions of the group that you have and how important you envision those guys being to what you accomplished this year.
Well, one of the things that Dan and AG talked about was having high ball production guys that make plays. It's just not a lot of guys, in my opinion, at defensive back throughout college and the league. I wish they can make a little bit more plays. And so it's either in you or it's not in you. And I think we've been able to bring in, three guys that have been highly productive. They're around the football. And that was one of the things that we were looking for, along with the rest of the guys that we have to add to the fold. And we're excited. Three veteran players, guys that have been successful in this league and cerebral players, smart, good leaders, in the meeting room, off the field. So we're excited about those three guys. Yeah, I mean that's something I think that it's hard to teach that. Either you got it, as a kid I played multiple sports. I was a baseball player. I played receiver in high school. A lot of these players in today's time, they just play one position all year round, right? All of us grew up playing multiple sports, outside playing. And so because of that, I think it hurts, some of the DBs sometimes. A lot of times when a pass happened during a game, it becomes an oh crap moment and they panic, right? And a lot of the times it's because a lot of those guys didn't play receiver, right? They haven't had a lot of moments when they was in that position. And so that's why, some of the guys, I think it's best to, there's still some players out there that play both sides of the ball, right? They return kicks, return punts. They were, play multiple sports in high school. So you try to look for some of those guys. And I think the guys that we have, some of the guys that we brought on, they've been highly productive at getting the ball. And we're excited to have those guys.
Obviously, that was one of the biggest holes of the squad was getting that secondary, getting those cornerbacks right. How much of a personal challenge do you take it to try to change it around, knowing that you have, the background as being a player here and actually caring? Like, how big is that for you to actually change this around and get this group on the right track this year?
Well, just me, being who I am. I wasn't the tallest of player. I wasn't the fastest. But I was able to do some things in this league because I was instinctive, I was smart, and I was very confident and competitive. And that was one of the first things that Dan said that he was looking for out of his corners coach, was a guy that was very competitive, a guy that had a certain amount of confidence about himself. That and a lot of times we're creatures of habit, right? If your leader is a certain way, then the guys that's around him is going to move the same way. That's why you was able to see the Lions last year play the way they play, because Dan, he moves a certain way. AG, those guys move a certain way. So that's the way I move, right? We have a lot in common. And so I just think, I'll be able to bring something unique to the position, to the room, instant credibility. a guy that's very passionate, a guy that's very relatable. I like to interact with the players. I'm still in shape. I can move. I can get out there and teach technique. So, and I'm with a group of guys that have a lot to give to the game. And so, I'm excited to be back, man. I think just being different from what I had as a player, right? I didn't have the chance to play with a guy that can get out there, or play for a guy that can get out there and teach the technique on the grass. You know, my best defensive back coach that I feel like I had throughout my career was a guy named Ron Meeks, who was my coach in St. Louis. He went on to be a defensive coordinator, but he was a guy that was a former player. He could teach technique. He could talk about technique. And so I think when you look at this staff and look at what Dan has assembled, there's nothing like it in the NFL, I feel. You know, we have a group of guys that have all played, and guys that can get out there, I think, that are great teachers. And so I'm excited for that opportunity. I think we're very relatable with the players, and so to be able to give them my point of view, what I see, I think it's going to be very helpful. I'm excited to get going with the guys and see, what we can come up with.
Defensive coordinator here, you guys kind of played the same position, same era. What's your relationship with him, and what are you looking for?
My relationship with AG is outstanding, right? I mean, he's really the reason why I'm here today. We both were 31. I was 31 in college, and I tell AG this because he's the OG, right? So when I got into the University of North Carolina, typically what we do, I try to tell the players now that I coach or that I was coaching in college, find a guy that resembles who you are as a player, right? So you can try to look up to Deion Sanders was that guy, right? But once I got to college, I wanted to see, they gave me 31 when I went to University of North Carolina. And the first thing I wanted to do, I wanted to see who else was wearing 31. And AG at the time might have been the only guy that resonated with me in that number. And our games were very similar. He was a guy that was dynamic as a player. He was explosive. He was a kick returner. He made plays. And so I was able to know of Aaron then. And ever since then, like when you're in this league, you're going to know the guys that play your position. And so when I decided to get into this coaching, Aaron was a guy, the first person I had the opportunity to shadow, and learned a lot from him in New Orleans. Ronald Curry, who's one of my good friends, who's a quarterbacks coach with the Saints, helped get me into New Orleans, and I shadowed AG for the whole preseason. I learned a lot from that guy. Dan was actually on that staff, and so just having a chance to work with those guys, to be with Sean Payton, and to shadow Aaron every day, kind of what got me started on this path of coaching. And so our relationship is pretty cool. I think we're very relatable. I think we have a lot in common. I think he's very smart, very intelligent, and but I think we see eye to eye, and I kind of know how he's wired. So I'm excited to be on the staff, excited for the opportunity, and ready to get going.
You and Aaron stayed in touch.
Say it again.
How much had you and Aaron stayed in touch after that internship?
Well, we stayed in touch. I got hired, and Mac Brown hired me in December of 2018. So I did 2 minority internships. I did one in 17 with the Saints, and then I did one with the Dolphins in 18. And then I immediately got hired right after that. But I stayed in touch, and that's the biggest thing with us as players that I feel like former players, we can do a better job of is staying in touch, right? We don't do that good enough. We don't do it until we need a favor, right? And so what I like to do, I like to stay in touch with my former players, guys that I'm friends with, and that's what I was able to do with AG. Stayed in touch. We would talk ball. He was following my progression. I was following, by me working with the Saints for that preseason. I kind of knew those guys and knew Marshawn Lattimore, knew PJ Smith, and some of the guys that was on that defense, knew Alex, right? And so I was able to follow those guys. Actually, when they came to Charlotte and played the Panthers, I went to the game, stood on the sideline with those guys. And so I was a Saints fan, right? I was an Aaron Glenn fan. I was a Dan Campbell fan. And so we just stayed in touch. And that's the thing, kind of like what happens in this game, as you guys know, out of sight, out of mind, right? When opportunity presents itself, if you're not staying in touch with guys, it's easy for you to be forgotten, right? Or for those guys to look past you. But we stayed in touch. He knew that I had a passion to get to the NFL. wanted to get here, right? Just, the league is about teaching. It's, the men that are here feel like I have a lot in common with, right? And so, college was great. I loved it. Did a lot of great things at Chapel Hill. Had a chance to mentor some players and learn a lot from Mac Brown, who's one of my mentors. But to have a chance to teach ball 24/7, and it's something that I love to do. And so I'm excited to be here. Grateful for the opportunity that Aaron and Dan gave me. And like I said, man, I can't wait to get going.
When you're prospect at corner or at safety, what are the first couple of things that jump out at you when you're looking at potential prospects?
Well, one of the first things that stands out, say to myself, a lot of these kids I was recruiting, right, years ago, but just trying to, we evaluated at the college level, right? We kind of were in control of our rooms and evaluating prospects and seeing what you like as a coach. And so, being a defensive back, a former defensive back and a corners coach, the first thing I look for is, high motor, a guy that's, again, high ball production, something that, we look for. And so you just certain things you try to target and you try to make sure, when you're evaluating guys, you see some of the things that interest you as a coach and as an evaluator.
About playing multiple sports. I don't know how much you've got a chance to talk to Cam since he's been brought on, but he was a guy that played multiple sports in high school, versatile defensive player like you were talking about. Do you see yourself in a guy like that when you're looking at his film, talking to him? Do you look for traits of yourself in guys?
It's crazy that you say that because I think we're around the same size, or he might be a little bit taller. When we went out to eat, I was sizing him up, right, checking him out, and I'm 5. I was measured at 5'9.5". I think I've grown since then. I think I'm right at 5'10". But most little guys, we say we're bigger than what we actually are, but. Very similar type player, very instinctive, smart, savvy. And, that was one of the things that impressed us about him was his ability to make plays. Coach Tomlin and I are from the same hometown. Saw him at a workout that I went to, and, he had nothing but great things to say about Cam, about, where we were getting in the player. He's like another coach on the field. He's one of those guys that's going to be in your office all the time, talking ball, asking questions. He's going to be one of the first guys in the building. He's one of the last ones to leave. And so as a coach, as a former player, that's what you love, right? You love to hear, because at the end of the day, and just this is why Dan coaches and this is why AG coach, the rest of the guys on our staff are the former players. We want these guys to learn from us, but also have a chance to do what we weren't able to do, right? I mean, that's the whole point of us coaching and passing the torch. So helping these guys have a chance to be better than us. And so when you heard some of the things that these younger players are doing and some of the guys in the NFL, that's what it's all about, because it's a job, right? And your job is to win, to maximize your potential, your abilities, to be great. And to hear that coming from a guy like Coach Tomlin, who is probably going to go down in the Hall of Fame as a head coach, it's pretty cool. It was pretty cool to hear. And we have that player here in Detroit. So I'm excited to get going with him. We've talked a couple of times, him and E-Man and Ducey. Excited for the new pieces that we have to add with the guys that we currently have.
The way you played. You also played with an edge, kind of nasty. You had some swagger out there. Seems like the guys you brought in have that as well. You can see that in Jerry too. How important is that to your room that you want your guys to move and play like that?
Well, again, that's what Dan. Dan, he played with the edge. AG played with the edge. We want guys that's very confident in their abilities. If you don't believe in yourself, how is everybody else going to believe in you, right? So that's the most important intangible that you need to have as a player is confidence to me. And so that's something that we feel like we've accumulated in our room. I'm excited to see those guys get to going, to get to work and see what comes from that. But to me, that's a critical component that you need to be great. Playing with the Rams, I was telling somebody this the other day, my first year I won a Super Bowl, somebody asked me about leadership one day. And I was like, there's no rule to say you have one or two leaders, right? There's no rule to say the leader is the guy that's always talking. On that team that won the Super Bowl the year before, that was 3-13. We had all types of leaders, right? I led by how I competed every day. Torrey Holt led by the example he set as a rookie, right? How he worked. His work ethic was crazy. Ray Agnew, who's the assistant GM, he led by how he lived, right? He was, he's an outstanding man. Dan, when we was here in Detroit, he led by how he worked, how he competed. You know what I'm saying? So it's different types of leaders. I think identifying what type of leader that you are, and that's how you shine, right? And so we're excited about, for what we have and the direction that we're headed. A tremendous amount of confidence. And again, I played for Dick Vermeil on that team. Because he moved a certain way, because he was relational with his guys, it trickled down to the team. And the same thing with this team here in Detroit, because of how Dan moves, how he moves daily, the energy that he brings, it easily trickles down, right? And guys are run through a wall for a man like that. So, and I think he's assembled a staff that's very similar to that, right? He was my teammate here. Aaron, the way he moves, he is a perfectionist, right? And so, and the rest of the guys that we've added on the staff, I think we have a lot in common, man. And I'm excited to work with these guys.
Guys, last one from Mike. I know you didn't get a chance to work with Jeff Okuda.
But what conversations did you have around the trade within it all, and what is losing him into the secondary?
I talked to him when I got hired, and was excited, knew about him as well in college, but, really didn't know much about, didn't meet the guy because a lot of the guys are home away, but like I got traded from Detroit in 2007 to Denver. And sometimes this happens in the game. And don't really know much about the situation. My job is to coach the players that's here, but I'm sure he's going to embrace that situation, the opportunity to go to Atlanta. He was a very successful guy in college. And so I'm sure he's looking forward to the opportunity. Wish him well.
Just one thing you mentioned about the Rams. You broke in with that team and to win a Super Bowl one year, to get to another one 2 years later. The greatest show on turf and all that. What was that whole environment like? That whole experience like to play in that?
Man, Mike, it happened so fast, dude. I was 23 years old, winning the Super Bowl, showing up in Nelly videos, bro. Like that whole year went so fast. But I tell people all the time, like I came, and I'm gonna tell you, it's crazy that you asked that, but I came into a league expecting to win a Super Bowl, right? After that, my first 3 years, I played in 2 Super Bowls. I played on the greatest show on turf. My locker mate was Aeneas Williams and Marshall Faulk, right? And the first year was Todd Light and Marshall. And then when Todd left, I had Aeneas Williams and Marshall, right? Ray Agnew, right? He was in my locker room. Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, Orlando Pace, London Fletcher. A lot of great, Leonard Little, a lot of great players, a lot of guys I learned a lot of great things from. And so I didn't, and this is the thing, I'm telling you this because at the time, that's what I was expecting. I left the University of North Carolina winning a lot of football games. And my first year in the league, I won second round, and then I won the Super Bowl. The following year, we went 10-6. We lost to the Saints in the first round of the playoffs. The third year, we lost to Tom Brady, right? So they ended our dynasty, what could have been a dynasty, we feel, and started their own dynasty, talking about the New England Patriots. After that, I never went back to the playoffs. Never. I played 8 more years in the league and never went back to the playoffs. And so at the time, I tell myself all the time, it happened so fast, but I didn't really appreciate it the way I should have because that was what I was expecting. So it tells you, like, things come and go so fast, and if you don't make the most of it, it can leave you just like that. And my last 8 years in the league, even though I had some individual success, when I came here, but ultimately, I didn't have the team success, right? And so that's why I'm so excited to be back here in Detroit because I feel like I left some things out there on the field that I wasn't able to provide here in Detroit. And to see the way those guys are trending now, the way we are trending with the leadership that we have, it's really a blessing to be back and to be a part of. And so, You know, like, because I wasn't able to provide something here as a player, I'm excited to be back to hopefully provide something as a coach. So it's pretty cool to be back. We're going to make the most of this opportunity, and I'm ready to get going.
What precipitated, I guess, the change to that side of the ball, and why the comfort level at coaching so many different positions?
Well, I worked for a guy in college, and he was a really good mentor. He put a lot of guys in this business at this level from a Division II school. And his philosophy was you moved sides of the ball. So I played on defense, GA in the secondary, and my first job was coaching the running backs. Then he brought me back to defense, and then he sent me over. I coached receivers. I came back to defense, and I went back over, and I was coaching quarterbacks and the offense coordinator. That understanding both sides of the ball, he was really in tune to helping coaches develop an overall ability to understand both sides of the ball, because it affects what side of the ball you're coaching on. And then he wanted to have you understand the fundamentals and techniques that all these positions have. And that was the way he mentored coaches, and that's what I went through. So experience-wise, when I got in the NFL, and obviously I started out as a quarterback guy, and then in the receiver room, and then in the tight end room, and being a coordinator. Those kinds of position moves were easy for me because I already knew a structure of how to understand those positions. Frank Signetti.
You've been to a lot of spots, as Justin said, coached a lot of different positions. I'm just curious, your first impressions of Ben and kind of what he's building here, and why this was such an attractive spot for you to kind of land as your next spot.
I did not know anyone on the staff here, did not know Ben. I've never met any of these guys, but when you're younger and you're coaching, and you know a lot of people in the business, and you have a lot of networking and relationships with, when you get older and you start to get to be my age, and I know I don't look that old, but I am, your guys start to go away. So your lifeblood is the younger coaches. So you start to look around and notice, and you're watching how they coach their teams, how their teams play, because those are the kind of guys you want to kind of attach yourself to, so you can further your career, because a lot of this business is about who you know, guys helping you get jobs, their recommendations. Well, for me, it needed to get a lot younger, and I was with a younger coach in Washington, Scotty, and I knew his dad, so there was a connection there. But here, I didn't know, and I was really fortunate to get in on this job, because you could imagine, the reputation that he has, the reputation that the head coach has. There were a lot of people that were interested in this job. I'm really blessed, fortunate that I got it, and I'm really excited to learn and be a part of it.
Follow up on that. What did you see from Ben or Dan last year, or in the years that you've gone against them, that made this or them attractive?
Well, first thing is, when you start and you're off to a poor start and you turn it around, it's a reflection of how your players are playing for you. It means they can connect with players. That's critical. Then you start to watch schematically how they're trained, philosophies of how you train players. And those kinds of things are the things you look for, that I really was, when you watch them on tape. Now, not knowing them, it's all just visually trying to put it together and get an idea of what they're like. But those are the things that were attractive.
What is it like to work with Ben so far as as a boss, and his intellect, or what's his approach like? What have you seen so far?
He's really smart. He's a lot smarter than me. I went to a public school. Even though we called it a public Ivy, it was a state school. I'm not so he's a lot smarter. He's a really smart guy. He's a football guy. He's coached a lot of different things in his background and been around a lot of really good coaches. And that's how you sort of become the coach you are. at such a young age, he's been through that process. Takes some guys a lot longer to go through. He's already sort of down the road from that. I think he has a really good feel for the personality that you have to be as a coordinator, the ability to connect with your players, each group, not just one group or one guy, which is it's somewhat unique sometimes for younger guys.
Example of that being smart, like how does that come through?
He understands the game from a football standpoint. Also, he understands the complexity of it and how to make it simpler. This game is a very complex game. And you guys know that. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things going on. But the guys that really have a gift are the guys that can take those complex things and make them simple. And he can do that. And simple things show up on their tape, but they show up at the right times, in the right fashion, the way they're trained. And that's kind of the brilliance of it. Now, I got no idea what his IQ is. I know it's better than mine, but what I'm talking about is not the book smart or hey, he knows more plays or anything like that. It's the ability to make things simple.
Five offense, not sure what they were able to do. What's your level of excitement to try to take this offense to the next level? And what do you look at as ways? Like, I know you can't give away too much, but what's some of the ways you can? I mean, he'll take it to the next level.
You know, that's something that I think you'd have to ask me a little farther down the road. I'm really right now trying to get a feel for how they put things together, how I fit, how the process goes. They're down the road from me, so I'm just sort of trying to get a feel for, and they're trying to get a feel for what I can help them with, what my background expertise are. I've done a lot of things, not just in the position realm and coaching coaches and game planning stuff. They're just still trying to figure out, how I fit into it too.
Last few years, and he has this reputation as a gambler or aggressive, however you want to put it, coming into another team where Dan Campbell kind of has that same approach with aggressiveness on fourth downs and trick plays and whatnot. Just when you're on a coaching staff with that, how do you see that, I guess, positively affect the environment for coaches and players when you're always going to have that aggressiveness at your call?
Well, I think it starts with trusting players. I think that is the foundation of it. When your players have a feeling you trust them in bigger moments, they'll prepare for those moments, and those things will show up more from a player standpoint. The aggressiveness of it, I think in this day and age, that's pretty much what a lot of coaches are becoming, is aggressive. Now, the brilliance to that is the right time. So, I think coach is extremely good at it. And the more that you do it, obviously, the better you get at it. So, that part of it all sort of goes together.
Why do you think we've kind of evolved into a place where coaches are more comfortable being aggressive like that?
Well, I think the NFL is trends, and things trend certain ways, and things get exposed, and then teams figure that, that might be a better way to do things. And I think that has something to do with it too. The more opportunities you get, the more aggressive you are, may lead you in a certain direction, as opposed to being conservative. So those trends are going that way. So coaches get more exposure to it. They see the ramifications. The reasons why it takes a little time for those coaches, for that to happen, is because once something happens, everybody's watching it, and then they're seeing the ramifications, and they're seeing all of the things that are encompassed with it. And I think over time, same thing with plays or systems or anything like that. When things are exposed, then you get more information, and it becomes more comfortable for you to understand how it fits in the way you want to do it.
on the logistics of how you landed here. You said you don't know anybody on the staff before you came in. Usually, we see coaches hiring guys they know. I mean, it's just the familiarity breeds comfort. So how did you, I guess, come about to landing here? How was the first connection made?
I tell you the truth, I'm not really sure how the first connections were made. Ben, they obviously were looking for this position. Johnny did it last year, and they were looking for something in this realm. And they reached out, obviously, as you guys know, feelers go out in the NFL when guys are looking. So people start getting back to people and names start coming up. And somehow my name came up. I'm very fortunate in that realm because not all does that lead somewhere. And Ben called me. We had a good conversation. And then, it was, as things go, they got other things going on. And I got in this process really late. Washington didn't let me go until way after the season because they were waiting to see what they were going to do with their deal. And I got cut out of that thing a little bit late. And then, so as things progressed, a couple days later, I guess Coach, somebody that he knew and respected their opinion, knew me, and gave him insight into my background. And then he called me and we had a conversation that went pretty good. And then, that led to, okay, we want to sit down with you. That led to an interview, which was a week later or whatever it was at the Combine. And then, they probably interviewed, I don't even know how many guys, but fortunately they liked what they heard from my communication with them. They liked what they heard from the communication of the people that knew me personally, and it worked out. I'm so fortunate to be here for a lot of circumstances.
Yeah, you mentioned something earlier about one thing that impressed you about Ben is when things weren't going well, the players were playing hard for him. Are there some subtle things that the average fan would look at that you look at that reveal itself in that regard?
In that regard, execution, finishing plays, when you watch film, you can see when guys are playing with detail, purpose. You know what I'm saying? Those things, and you watch a lot of tape, and I know you guys are, casual fans, and some of you might be even farther along than that. But from coach's standpoint, those things are like naturally ingrained after you watch. So you're watching those things all the time, and those are the kind of things that were sticking out.
You're still catching up, right, kind of figuring out how you can help, but you have been in the senior offensive assistant role before, so what are some of the ways in the past and ideas that I guess that you have of how you'll be of assistance in growing the offense?
Yeah, so my background, like when I talked to Coach and Ben about, this position, there's a lot of things you can do as a senior offensive assistant. Some of it is in the realm of coaching coaches. When you have younger coaches on your staff, some of it is in the realm of just game planning, being advanced in the game planning, meaning the coordinator spends the week worried about that game and somebody else can worry about the next game because I'm not worried about being in the play calling part of it. So I can work ahead. So those are some other things that you can do. From the standpoint of game planning, not to get into a lot of detail about it, but that's kind of some different things you can do. Then just information, how did you do this? How did you do that? Hey, this is the way we did it. How did you do it? And just another perspective, an educated opinion that might be different than theirs, that makes you think about other things, and that's another realm that you can get into. Those are all kind of in the senior offensive assistant.
Anything game day wise too?
I've done a couple different things there too. I've been involved in the play calling game day, and not as much in the advanced part of it because you got to stay in that moment. And then I've been not involved at all in the game plan calling, and I could be a little further ahead.
Just the early stages, your early memories you have of working on the same team as him. I know you're a different side of the ball.
Well, the great thing about Dan is what you see is what you get. And he was that way as a player. He showed up every day to work. He had his lunch pail, and he went after it as a player, just like he is now as a coach, which I'm very proud and very proud to have the opportunity to be associated with him as a coach now. He and AG both, when I met with them, it was kind of a match made. I thought it was a great situation, and very, very proud to be here.
Was it to get back into the game? I mean, five years away, is that correct, Coach?
Yeah, I think 17 was my last year there at the Bears, and then I did TV for a couple years. Then COVID hit. That was kind of a strange time for all of us. Kind of was really good to kind of get back with my family. My family all came down to Florida with us, and we got to hang out as a family for probably about 6 months. And then after that, I kind of had a little bit of a void, as far as, I didn't really have a purpose. And so kind of looked around the league, people I knew, to be associated with, and I went with Frank Reich last year to Indianapolis, and enjoyed that situation, even though it wasn't a very successful season. Working with the guys on defense that I was familiar with, Richard Smith and Ron Miles had both coached with me before, both at Carolina and at Denver. So I really enjoyed it, and I kind of missed the game, the day-to-day of the game planning and that kind of stuff. And then when I had the opportunity, I elected not to go back to Indy, and I was kind of looking around, and was a perfect situation, to be with Dan, and Aaron Glenn, both who I have great respect for, knew them as players and knew them as people, and really excited about, the things they've started here in Detroit. We got to see firsthand when they worked against us in Indianapolis last year in camp. So it's a talented young team, and I like the direction that Dan has them going.
Expand a little bit on just what you missed the most. I think when we talked to Dan about you, he said it was a chess match and preparing for games.
I think whenever, even ex-players, a lot of players that I've coached, when they got out of the game, you miss the camaraderie, you miss the day-to-day, you miss the closeness of the people, because you work very, very, very close, whether you're really whether you're playing or coaching. And so I miss that. Naturally, you miss that. It's just, it's like an old boys club, but digging into it, what I missed, I felt more than just the camaraderie was how can we stop this? How can we mess them up in this area? How can we do this? The chess match part of it, I didn't realize I'd miss it that much. And, really enjoyed that a year ago, and looking forward to doing that all over again here. And I really like our system here defensively, and, it should be a lot of fun.
Content when you walked away and then realized, like, oh man, that's still tugging at me. I want to go out.
Yeah, that was basically the feeling. Is the the chess match of it. It's just you're competing against the best people in the world at what they do, and so you don't realize it till it's gone for a minute. And then kind of what happened to me is I went 16 straight years as the head coach, never took a year off, and I think you kind of realize there's some burnout there that you don't even know. Doing 3 straight jobs, I'm not even sure it's been done before, without taking a year off. So, once I recovered from kind of the burnout, I think you got a lot more energy.
Defense finishing last in the NFL last year, but they, finished different than they started. Really, really young group. Do you have any, comparisons to points in your career where you were coaching a really young group that was kind of figuring out the chemistry and cohesion of it as they, turn the corner?
Yeah, I think, plus, there's improvement too. It's not just improvement because of the experience and time on task with the players, that they get better. I think you saw that. I think, some of the things we've done this off season have been helpful. We've got a draft coming up. I'm not going to get into all that, but, you get a chance to improve your team, so to speak. And I think the coaching staff here defensively, and I can't speak to the offense as much because I'm not, closely associated, but you know, they made a lot of improvement, you know, as the season wore on. I think, you know, statistics are kind of odd because once you sink pretty far down, it's hard to recover. And so I think the end of the year stats maybe weren't that impressive, but, you know, the most important stat is the win-loss column. And they finished strong. And not just, you know, as a football team they did, but in particularly on defense, I think they got better as they went. And now we get an opportunity to build on that.
A lot of rookies playing towards the end of the year and playing together on that defense. What's that progression from year one to year two, and how much more comfortable typically are guys as they come back for that second year?
You know, yeah, I think it's huge. And, you know, I think the expectations of the coaches, I think it takes a while for, you know, players to get a feel for that. And, you know, with that comes some growing pains as far as making changes, you know. So I'm sure there were some changes, you know, personnel-wise, you know, as part of the march through the season a year ago. And, you know, you saw those improvements. You saw those young guys getting better with time. And the more you do it, the better you get. And I saw, you know, there's good evidence of that last season, you know, just in that march on through the season on defense.
What type of potential do you see in Aiden Hutchinson? There's a lot of excitement around him here, but what type of potential do you see for him moving forward in his career?
Well, I mean, he's an impact player. I think the fact that he's kind of a homegrown kid as well, I think, you know, adds to the allure. He's a guy that works hard. You see, you know, a lot of strain in his game when you look at him on tape. I just met him a couple of days ago for the first time, you know, as a Lion. So, but you see great potential. He had a very, very good rookie season, and I think he'll just be that much better for it. You know, those experiences, and he'll just get better and better. But he's an outstanding prospect, an outstanding player, and look for a lot of improvement.
John, where do you think the biggest area you can help Aaron Glenn will be?
Well, you know, I think, you know, the way the coaching's gone, you know, shoot, when I first got in this back in 1989, you know, we had 4 coaches on defense. You know, we have 10 now, you know. You know, so the game's grown, the precision of the league's changed and grown. You know, everybody's got an assistant now. You know, I was a DB coach way back when, and it was just me. You know, now there's a DB and a DB assistant. There's a linebacker coach, a linebacker assistant. So everybody's got an assistant. I joked, you know, last year, you know, like I'm like the defensive coordinator's assistant now, you know. So, you know, it's just another set of eyes. It's not anything, you know, I've got the, you know, master key to anything. It's just, you know, another set of eyes, another thing to look at, maybe another set of experiences to draw from. Just here to help, you know, anywhere you can. And, you know, it's exciting. You know, you got a good bunch of guys and guys that are willing to listen. You know, and if they don't want to listen, that's fine too, you know. So it's you know, it's just another set of eyes and ears and experiences.
For just one other thing, for a younger team that's sort of ascending, that, you know, has championship aspirations at some point, how does your championship experience, how may that, you know, benefit the coach?
Well, you got to put in the time. You know, it's you know, a lot can be made on the outside. You know, about your prospects and whatnot, but the reality is you're going to get what you earn. And, you know, if guys will put in the time, they'll put in the work, you know, they'll get to reap those benefits. And really kind of getting that mindset, you know, that nothing worth the darn comes easy, and this is very, very difficult. You know, it's you know, these divisions are hard to win. You know, you got to put in a lot of time and effort, and you know, I think they've got that mindset. I think this is a tough-minded football team. Saw that when we worked against them last training camp, and you know, just kind of watched their progress this year, watched them grow and get better as they went, and you know, hopefully they've got a small taste, and you know, now you got to go put on your big boy pants and get her done.
The coach of different teams, different times that have had some strong seasons, I'm sure high expectations going into the next season, and they didn't pan out. How do you guard against that?
Well, it's you know, it's why it's such a competitive game. You know, you got to come to work every day. You can't take days off. You know, about the time you kind of start patting yourself on the back and those types of things, you get bit. So you have to come do your work every day and getting that understanding and that mindset, is all part of it, because you got to show up every day. There's no cupcakes in this league. Sometimes, in different levels of football, you can kind of show up and you're just better than them. Well, that's not the way the NFL works.
Sometimes teams will buy into their own hype a little too much. Sometimes they get a little too comfortable. Or
yeah, the mind plays tricks on you. That's for sure. I think we all can experience that. So, you got to put in the time. It's just plain and simple. And the faster guys understand that, and you treat these practices, not like just to get by and get to the game. Is you got to use every one of these opportunities to get better, and that's how you win.
Super duper excited to have this opportunity. Very thankful and humble to come and have an opportunity to be a part of a great organization and work with a head coach like Coach Campbell and the Detroit organization. I've been here a month. It's been a whirlwind. It's quite different from the college schedule right now, so getting used to that again. The way they do things on this level has been fun the last month, but super excited. I just like you guys had a firsthand seat last year to watch this team grow and mature, was playing their best ball this season down the stretch, and having an opportunity to watch that from afar in college and having the opportunity now to come in and be a part of that and build something moving forward was a great opportunity that I couldn't bypass. And so I'm very thankful and blessed to be here. This is going to be I'm looking for a great opportunity, a great season, a great ride, and can't wait to get on the field with these guys and get in the trenches with the coaches. So you guys have any questions, we can get this thing started.
Return here next week. I know you don't get your hands on them for a few weeks yet, but maybe just the first impressions of your room. You got some young guys in that room that got a lot of snaps last year. You got some vet guys, some guys come back from injury. Looks like a pretty good mix of guys. Just maybe some first impressions.
Well, I've talked to most of those guys. They're not here, so that's different. So you don't get a chance to sit in the room with them one-on-one. But just first impression off the conversations I've had, they've been outstanding. The guys are eager, they're excited, they're ready to build upon where they stopped last year. And for me, that's so encouraging as a coach, because I'm ready to help them get to where they want to go. But everybody's been extremely excited, extremely positive, and ready to go. So that's been good. I like the room. It's a good mix. We got some young guys with a lot of talent, just ready to help those guys grow and continue to become the players they want to be in that way. So I'm excited about what we have.
How did the opportunity come about? Sounds like there was an interest in getting back to the pro game after getting that taste a few years ago. How did this opportunity come about for you?
It was, I had an opportunity several years ago in New York with the Jets and Coach Bowles. Excuse me, I'm sweating. I just got finished working out. You know how it is to stop sweating, so I'm sweating, guys. But I had an opportunity a few years ago with the Jets with Coach Bowles, and I loved that experience. It was my first experience in the pros, and having the opportunity, I think, to work with some of the best athletes in the world, the best guys at their craft, and be able to help them and elevate their game. That's an amazing feeling, and I like competing at the highest level, I've been blessed. I've been at some great college places and to help guys develop and to get to this league, but ultimately I always knew I wanted to come back and work in the NFL, and what a tremendous opportunity to come and work here at this organization with a group that's young, the way they finished off, where they're going. So I jumped all over this opportunity. It was the right opportunity because, Penn State's a great place. Coach Franklin's a great place. I'm truly blessed to be there. Was there for 3 years. We had a great run with defensive linemen and on that side of the ball. So that was hard to leave, but I just knew for where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, this was the right opportunity for me.
In the draft preparation, and maybe what advantages do you bring having coming straight from the college game, where it's players that you may have coached or coached against or recruited?
Well, I think from being in the college coaching the last 7 years from the NFL, like a lot of these players I know. I recruited a lot of them, especially at these high-level places. I've recruited a lot, so you know you have a little bit more insight into some of those guys than the average person or coaches coaching in the NFL that hadn't recruited those guys. So I know a lot about them. You know, I think it's also good to have a different set of eyes. I provide that. I see things a little different coming in this way. So I've just been trying to add that and give the little bits and nuggets that I know about some of the individual players that are in this draft. Just try to throw that in and, you know, give that to Brad and Coach Campbell and let them make a decision from there. But, you know, there's been guys that I know the ins and outs, know about their family, know about their background because I've been recruiting them over several years.
One area where this defense lagged behind last year was run defense. You coached a very good run defense at Penn State last year. What goes into being strong up front against the run?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think, you know, number one, you know, it starts with, you know, being a great technician. I think it's being a great technician, having the right eyes, hand placement, good, proper footwork. You know, a lot of people think playing defensive line is not a technical spot. You can just go, you know, two big people running together and one guy wins. It's a lot more complicated than that. And I'm being facetious a little bit, but, you know, it's just, to me, it starts with the attitude and mentality. And, you know, Coach has created that attitude and mentality here. Coach Campbell, you guys have seen him, how he works, and just applying that to being a technician and finishing plays and things like that. So I think it starts with the mentality. We have that here, and we're just going to continue to work and be great technicians at what we do. And I think that's a key for it. I know that's what helped us this year at Penn State.
Ceiling is for Aiden Hutchinson, and maybe how much development did you recognize on tape, you know, from his rookie season with the Lions versus what you saw in college?
You know, Aiden, I'm glad he's on my side now. We had a tough one the last time I saw Aiden on the field. I think we had 6 snaps of offense and he had 3 sacks to start the game. So I'm glad he's on. I'm glad he's on our side now. But you know, the guy's a high motor guy. He was extremely productive in college. And you know, when I've watched his games from the NFL, he still plays that way. I think the ceiling is as high as he wants it to be. He's a talented guy and he works at it. So super excited to get with him and help him go where he wants to go. Very excited.
I know it's not your room, but how excited were you to see what the team did in free agency, building up that secondary? Because obviously pass rush is a marriage between rush and cover, right? And when you improve that part of it, just how much can that improve what you guys, you know, can improve, you know, how you guys can play and what you guys can do?
Well, I think you said it perfectly. I think rush and coverage go together. You know, I just look at what we did last year at Penn State. I think we were 5th in the country in sacks, and we were number 1 in the country in PBUs. You know, we had some pretty good corners. So, you know, when them guys can lock guys up and take them off the map, that gives us more time to get to the quarterback. And then flip side, they know when we're rushing the way we rush, they don't have to cover for long. So I think it works hand in hand. And so anytime we get great people in the secondary, as a D-line coach, I'm very excited about that because that gives us more opportunity to get back there and we just feed off of each other.
You say to Brad, like, hey, you took care of those guys in the free agency. How about maybe some draft love for my group?
Well, I'm gonna be selfish. I'll take as many good defensive linemen I can take. But you know, obviously, Coach Campbell and Brad, they got this thing handled for us. So you know, they'll make the right moves for it. But you know, selfishly, you take as many good defensive linemen that you can take.
I think Aaron Glenn frequently calls this a gap and a half scheme, right? But it's multiple. How similar is it to what you're familiar coaching in terms of schematics?
Very similar. We were similar when I was in New York, similar in our principal at Arkansas. So all of it kind of marries a little bit, you know. So and we did some things that were similar at Penn State, you know, with Coach Pry when he was there. We were a little different last year with Coach Diaz. But everywhere you've been, you know, there's always different ways they say to skin a cat, but there's a lot of ways that are very similar. So there's a lot of similarities with that. Just it's really like when I walked in and got with AG, it's just like, you know, I never left. You know, going back to some of the people that I've worked with, Coach Pry and you know, the Jets and things like that, it just kind of fell back into, you know, doing it that way. So, yeah, a lot of similarities.
Coming into a team that set an NFL record for rookie sacks last season, what is, I guess, the unique challenge of breaking down a group when they had that success, but still has so much more room to grow, and you weren't necessarily around maybe last year while that growth was happening?
I think part of what you do is, you come in and you look at why they were able to get those sacks. Was it a combination of, schematically, was it a great call, or was it they beat the guy with great technique in the pass rush move? So you look at the things on how you got them and how you can improve there. But then you look at the ones where they missed opportunities. And I think that's where you get the biggest growth is you look at the ones that you didn't get and why you didn't get and figure out why. So coming in, I want to make sure that, hey, man, we got a great rush plan. They know if this happens, I'm doing this, and then I have a counter off of that. So it's helping them build their repertoire of what they have. And then I think recognition is one of the biggest things. So being able to diagnose this is what's happening and then having a quick reaction to it and going based off what you're really good at. So I think when you look at all of those and put it together, I think that's how you get better. I think that's how the guys figure out, hey, man, I had 6 sacks this year, but now I know when I get this, I'm doing that. I think that's when you see the growth. So that's what we'll try to do a good job of doing and helping them recognize so we can elevate those numbers and be even better next year.
Just since you were talking about that marriage of rushing coverage, Joey Porter Jr., how important is he to what you guys accomplished up front last year and sort of prospered?
Really good. I mean, we had, looking back at it, we had 2 all Big Ten corners and both of our starting corners were All-Americans. So, and we had an All-American safety. That's pretty good. We were really, really good in the secondary. And again, when you lead the country in PBUs, that says a lot. We played a lot of man there, and those guys could cover. So anytime you get that going, and then you have pass rushers, that's a great combination to harass people. And that's what we were blessed to have last year at Penn State.
Maybe your first impressions of this room, obviously last season had a Pro Bowl caliber guy and TJ Hawkinson they trade away, but then they still set the franchise record with 12 touchdowns from the position. Just the guys that you're inheriting, James, Brock, some of the other guys in the room, first impressions?
First impression is when that trade happened, these guys played really well. And you could see the growth, go as the season went on. I think a lot of that credit goes to the men in the room, and I think a lot of that credit goes to Tanner. I think Tanner did a hell of a job with the guys. And I think that needs to be said. Brock, James, Shane, they all contributed in their ways, and there's still a lot of growth for each of them. So I'm excited to have them and excited for them to get in here and start working.
Steve, like the head coach of this team, you're kind of a throwback tight end when you play the position. Obviously, the game's constantly evolving, right? So what is the balance for you mentally when you're coaching these guys to, sticking to some of those old school principles of block first versus maybe some of the more modern spread concepts? How do you balance that as a coach?
Yeah, so I really don't balance it. I think, I to its core, football hasn't changed since me and Dan were playing the position. I think it's still about physicality first, and you go to the game with that mindset and that approach. For the most of the time, the rest of it will take care of itself. I still think you can win a bunch of games in this league just being more physical than your opponent. Now, obviously, as you go, you tie other things on top of that, your technique, your fundamentals, your discipline, your approach to the game, all that. But I think it starts with physicality, and I don't think that'll change.
Is there any more pressure playing for or working under Ben Johnson, who coached the position, and Dan, who obviously played the position himself? Yeah,
we got a lot of tight end coaches there. But pressure, no. I think I put enough pressure on myself, so I don't think there's any more undue pressure from those guys. I just want to do the best job I can for Ben and Dan.
The opportunity excite you as far as I'm not sure if you want to be a head coach one day, but thinking about Ben himself was barely coordinator around this time last year. Wasn't even named the play caller until training camp, basically. Now he's on a hot seat, for the hot seat, but hot in the coaching circles for a next head coaching job. It can change that quickly. Is that something that excites you, interests you?
Yeah, no, to be honest, and this is going to sound cliche, but I just take it one day at a time, work my tail off as much as I can that day and move on to the next. So I'm not really, doesn't really concern me. I think it's cool that Ben has people have shown that interest, but for myself, no, I mean, not at this point.
Might tie in a little bit to what Justin asked, but I mean, it's no secret you guys are looking at tight ends, draft-wise, and at every position. But ideally, in a prospect, what are some of the things that you look for that you gravitate to?
In a prospect?
Yeah.
Just a football guy, kind of some of the same stuff that I had spoke of. Smart, disciplined, loves the game, and is tough. I think, those are kind of my core principles is what I would look for.
And do you think what if anything, do you think your tight end room is lacking right now? What do you guys need to be complete?
I haven't been around the guys. I wouldn't go into the side, the lacking side in my room. I think in my room or in that tight end room in general, any tight end room, there's always ways to improve, right? It's a position that you got to be in the passing game. You got to go block a 300-pounder. The next play, you got to go run by a safety. So there's always things to improve on, and we'll work on that once we get rolling.
Obviously, in the
hiring process a little bit. I mean, like you look at this coaching staff. There's so many former NFL guys here. Talk about just having the opportunity to work with those guys, and we spoke with guys in the past, but having that NFL experience and a whole diverse staff with NFL experience, like what was your process like? Did that intrigue you as well, working with other guys?
Yeah, just the opportunity for Dan to call me after the season. I jumped at the opportunity. I thought this place was a fit for me. To be honest, in my mind, a destination for me. I wanted to be here. This is a place I wanted to be. I felt like I knew what Dan was all about, and that was really kind of the direction I wanted to go with my career. So yeah, this is a place I wanted to be.
You guys are obviously in the draft prep mode. I'm just curious, what's your thoughts on this class? I mean, some people say it's one of the better tight end classes in maybe a decade or so, some draft analysts. Just your first thoughts on the class itself?
Well, I mean, overall, yeah, it's a good class. We've obviously done a bunch of work on it, but I think I'm not going to get into detail about players or any of that stuff. I think I'll leave that to Brad to talk about the draft class and where he intends to go.
Cleveland, I think, with Hank for a while. I guess what was that relationship then, and how much maybe did that play a role even coming here?
Yeah, I've talked. We've been friends for a long time. I think he got into Cleveland in 2006, maybe. But I had a great relationship with Hank, great teammate. You can kind of see that carry over for him as a coach. Yeah, it's great to be around him, and we have kind of the same thoughts and philosophies for the game. So it's neat to be here with him.
And it's one of those positions that maybe doesn't get the credit it deserves, just the difficulty of transitioning from college to pros with the amount of information those guys have to take in on top of the physical adjustments. I'm just curious, you've got a very young group. I know Brock's got a good amount of experience through 2 years, but what is the pros and cons with working with such a young room?
I mean, the pros are there's always growth to be had. You can kind of mold, what you want out of these players. And like I was saying with the position, there's so many specific things we need to do in both the run and the passing game that we can really grind away on these techniques and the fundamentals that we want to work on. And I can mold them a little bit into what I want out of a player. That's the neat part about it, right? With both, Brock and James in the running game, I can kind of get my hands on them and teach them the ropes and kind of try to learn some of the things that that I had to go through as a player, as a young guy. So I'm going to try to put my own stamp on these guys, and it's a really good group of men. So I'm excited about that.
I know you said you haven't met with any of these guys yet, but what do you know about James Mitchell, either from his tape, from I don't know if you did any college scouting on him, and I guess what are your expectations for him this year?
Yeah, I liked him coming out, so I know that. And here's the thing, here's a kid that was coming off of an ACL last year, right? And that's hard to do. I've had to do that myself as a player, and you're really not yourself that whole next year. So there's a lot of credit to him just being out there playing. the things you see on tape, you see the athletic tools, and some of the things he can do movement wise, and we're gonna grow and build off of that as we go this year. So I'm excited to get him this second year off the ACL. I think that's an important year to grow and develop. I think there's a lot of room to grow there for him.
Last year, the Cardinals drafted Trey McBride. He was their first pick in the second round, first pick, of the draft on a tight end. So how much strong arming came from you to force the personnel guys to get what you wanted?
I like Trey. I'll leave it at that.
How much we've heard about this kind of the gamesmanship, I guess, within the walls. I guess people leaving notes, people like encouraging little hints about tape, whatever. Do you ever get involved in that as far as like, hey, I really like this guy, or putting your favorite guy maybe in the front a little bit?
No, none of that really. This process here has been it's been pretty cool to watch. So Brad and that department, they're so detailed in what they do. They give us all a voice to say what we need to say and say our piece, and you just kind of keep it moving from there. So it's been really, really cool to watch, the process that they take, and how detailed it is, with both the free agency and the draft.
You've got your
couple more guys.
Plenty of your own experiences with, both playing and coaching. I'm just wondering, when you get a guy like Zach Ertz in your room that's done it at such a high level, Pro Bowl level, like, do you still learn things from bringing in a veteran guy like that? Is there anything that helps you develop as a coach when you work with a player like that?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. I think as a coach, you can always learn. All these techniques and all the stuff that you're teaching as a coach was something that some player did sometime, and it looked good on tape. And hey, let's try it this way, right? So there's no doubt. I learned a lot from Zach. Just the way he saw the game, the way he prepared, no question. Love being around him.
General, but I've asked this to players before, former players that go into coaching or front office before. When you look at tight ends, do you look for yourself in those guys? Do you look for things that you couldn't do? You know what I mean? Like, how do you sort of, how do your experiences contribute to how you view players, I guess?
I think when you play the position, it probably does make you a little tougher on the guys that you're evaluating. I've had people tell me that in the past. So I would say that you're probably a little harder on them. You're looking at the little details of what they're doing, and you just got to have an open mind and realize, hey, these guys are going to change and get better too. So